Emma's bedroom was filled with the comforting aroma of lavender as Marcus Thompson gently placed the little girl back into her bed. He tucked the worn quilt up to her chin, the fabric soft against her delicate skin. Despite her illness, a small smile played on Emma's lips. "Thank you for the secret," Marcus whispered, his voice echoing the quiet intimacy of the room. "Thank you for carrying me," Emma replied, her eyelids fluttering closed as she drifted off to sleep. With a final pat on her shoulder, Marcus turned to leave the room. As he descended the creaky staircase, sunlight streaming through the attic window, his thoughts drifted to the old clock downstairs. Its chime had fallen silent months ago, a silence that now seemed deafening in the stillness of the house. He had been tasked with fixing it, but the true nature of the repair was still unknown. In the living room, amidst the scattered tools of his trade, Marcus paused. He looked at the dismantled clock parts spread across his workbench, each tiny gear and spring waiting patiently for his touch. Marcus had always found solace in his work, a sense of calm in the quiet concentration it demanded. But today, his focus was elsewhere. Thoughts of Emma lying upstairs, weak and weary from her battle with pneumonia, pulled at his heartstrings. Over the past few weeks, he had become fond of the spirited 8-year-old, her infectious laughter echoing in his memory. During his visits to fix various household items, Emma would often tag along, her eyes wide with curiosity as she observed his work. He had even let her wind up a small toy engine, her small hands fumbling with the key. The pride in her eyes when she heard the engine chug to life had been a sight to behold. The sudden quiet in the house seemed to amplify the ticking of the clock, a rhythmic counterpoint to the turmoil in his chest. He knew he should get to work, but a strange reluctance held him back. As he stared at the disassembled clock, a sudden realization dawned on him. Perhaps the most intricate mechanism of all wasn't down here in his workshop, but upstairs in Emma's bedroom. With newfound purpose, Marcus set aside the clock and headed back upstairs. He wasn't sure what he was going to do, but he knew he could unfix a broken clock without first tending to the heart of the house that made it tick. He found Mrs. Henderson in the kitchen humming softly as she prepared tea. Sunlight streamed through the window, illuminating the dust motes dancing in the air. "Mrs. Henderson," Marcus began, his voice carrying a hint of uncertainty. "Do you remember what was wrong with Emma?" Mrs. Henderson turned, her eyes filled with understanding. "Pneumonia. The same illness that took her father 3 years ago," she said, her voice catching slightly. "She's strong-willed, just like her father. But sometimes the silence can be the hardest thing to bear." Marcus nodded, realizing that the silence he had felt in his workshop was echoed in this house, a silence born not of absence, but of love. They walked upstairs together in companionable silence, the soft carpet muffling their footsteps. When they reached Emma's room, Marcus found the little girl sleeping peacefully, her breathing soft and even. As he stood there, watching her, he understood that sometimes fixing wasn't about repairing a broken thing, but about mending a fractured spirit, about reminding someone that they weren't alone in the silence. Sunlight filtering through the curtains painted stripes of gold on Emma's flushed cheeks. Her lips parted slightly, revealing the faint outline of her tongue against her pale skin. The rhythmic rise and fall of her chest was a reassuring metronome marking the steady beat of her small heart. Marcus felt a lump forming in his throat, threatening to spill over into his eyes. He turned away, unable to bear the intensity of the emotion that threatened to overwhelm him. As he did, he noticed a framed photograph on the bedside table. It was a picture of Emma as a toddler, her arms slung around a man's neck, her face pressed against his cheek. The man's smile was as warm as the sun, his eyes crinkling at the corners. Beside him, the little girl's laughter seemed to echo, defying the silence that had fallen over the room. Marcus knew then that the most important thing he could do right now was to step back, to let space and time weave their healing magic. He gently closed the door behind him, leaving the silent room and the sleeping child to the tender embrace of the early morning light.